It is a cold night in October. The body of a man is floating in the English Channel and is found off the German coast. The body has been in the water for 10 days and cannot be identified, so there is no point in recovering the corpse. Instead, the pockets are emptied of personal possessions. And the decomposing corpse is again left to the elements. A couple of days later, in the Dutch harbour town of Vlissingen, it turns out that the personal belongings found on the body belong to Rudolf Diesel, the discoverer of the innovative diesel engine. Shortly before his mysterious death, the famous inventor Ivar Knudsen, a technical genius working for BMW, had refined the diesel engine for use in ships. And the founder of the East Asiatic company, H.N. Andersen, immediately saw the opportunity to conquer the world's oceans with this new type of engine. Together, the three far-sighted men built a revolutionary ship, the Selandia, a ship that marked the first steps towards a globalized world. Was changing and rapidly heading towards the First World War. People might be uncertain, but there was enthusiasm for machinery and technology, and there was both prestige and military might in being at the forefront of technological development. The successor to the steam engine, the diesel engine, was a major step forward for industry, and its new opportunities could be exploited at sea. The motor vessel Selandia became the first real demonstration that Rudolf Diesel's invention of the diesel engine would change the maritime world forever. Rudolf Diesel, the son of poor German immigrants, was born on the 18th of March 1858 in Paris. Diesel had a hard upbringing, but early on he showed great technical and mathematical gifts. Already as a 14-year-old, he had decided to study as an engineer. He moved to Augsburg in southern Germany and immersed himself in his studies. Rudolf Diesel combined technical insights with overwhelming drive and quickly achieved the highest grades in engineering. This won him a place at the acclaimed Technical University in Munich. He completed his studies in 1880 with the best results ever at the university.
Hat sehr, sehr fleißig gelernt. Dieser Fleiß und diese Hingabe und auch diese Hartnäckigkeit in seinem ganzen Charakter war sehr wichtig auch für sein späteres Leben, denn es gab viele Rückschläge während seiner Erfindertätigkeit, aber er hat sich davon nicht abbringen lassen. Er wollte alles immer ganz besonders gut machen und bis ins Detail richtig durchdenken. Und diese Hartnäckigkeit hat sich für ihn ausgezahlt gemacht.
At an age of just 22, Rudolf Diesel had the potential to change the world. He was obsessed with machines. He wanted to make them more efficient, and he had already had an idea for a completely new type of engine. Steam engines had been in use for more than 400 years. Rudolf Diesel wanted to use diesel oil and compression as a driving force instead of coal and steam. Over the years, Rudolf Diesel did more and more work on his invention. He worked day and night, and after more than 10 years of hard work, he was close to his main goal.
Dear Mama, very soon I intend to show my work to the public, and I hope to be highly successful. For 12 years I have been delicately nurturing a flower. Now I want to pick it and enjoy its scent.
At more or less the same time, on the opposite side of the world, another man was going full steam ahead to create a career that would subsequently influence the creation of the Selandia. A businessman, H.N. Andersen, had dreamt of going to the Far East since his early childhood by the harbour in Naxco. In 1876, his dream was fulfilled when he went ashore in Siam, as Thailand then was. By hard work and application, he became the captain aboard the Tun Kramon, a ship owned by the Siamese royal family. On his first voyage as captain, H.N. Andersen carried a cargo of hardwood from the Siamese forests. He faced severe weather and storms on the way to Europe. But the valuable cargo was brought safely to England. He made so much on this one voyage that the young H.N. Andersen decided to settle in Bangkok and start a trading company, Andersen and Company, which was the forerunner of an international trading company, EAC. At the same time, at the city engineering department in Copenhagen, a young engineer called Ivar Knudsen was helping to construct Copenhagen's fortifications. It turned out that he had good academic and practical abilities and good interpersonal skills. Qualities that would later turn out to be key in the development of the ship Selandia. Whilst Ivar Knudsen was enjoying success, the German Rudolf Diesel was also making progress. He was now very close to his goal, a fully operational diesel engine. In February 1892, Rudolf Diesel was granted his first patent for the new type of engine. The following year, he published his major work on the subject. But Rudolf Diesel's health was suffering from the work. Again and again, he complained of recurrent headaches.
Rudolf Diesel hat über viele, viele Jahre ganz hart gearbeitet. Er hatte mehrere Nervenzusammenbrüche, er hatte starke Kopfschmerzen, er war nervenschwach in manchen Situationen, er hat auch manchmal die Beherrschung verloren und er musste sich auch mehrere Male zur Erholung begeben.
Despite his bad health, Rudolf Diesel continued to work hard on the engine. He believed more and more in the project. In a letter to his previous lecturer, he wrote,
I have some exciting news. I have invented a new engine which, according to my calculations, would only use 1/10 of the coal required for steam engines.
In 1893, Rudolf Diesel signed a contract with Maschinenfabrik Augsburg in Germany, a factory that a couple of years later became MAN. Rudolf Diesel could now concentrate on working on developing the diesel engine without distractions.
Der Abschluss des Vertrages mit der Maschinenfabrik Augsburg oder späteren MAN war für ihn die Krönung seiner Tätigkeit, denn Rudolf Diesel wusste, er musste sich die Unterstützung einer großen Maschinenfabrik sichern, denn er konnte dieses Projekt des Dieselmotors nicht alleine vorantreiben. Er hatte nur eine kleine Werkstatt und keine ausreichenden Geldmittel.
In August 1893, Rudolf Diesel was ready for the first trial run of his invention. Many people regarded the explosion as a fiasco, but the accident was far from a reversal.
Am 10. August 1893 gab es in der Werkstatt einen lauten Knall wie einen Kanonenschlag. Und es zeigte sich, dass der am Motor angebaute Indikator, der die Leistung gemessen hat, in die Luft geflogen war. Er flog den Männern buchstäblich um die Ohren. Was aber nicht beschädigt war, war die Maschine selber, der Motor. Und das war ein gutes Zeichen für Rudolf Diesel, denn es hat sich schon in den ersten Sekunden des Versuches gezeigt, dass der Motor selbst gezündet hat.
Rudolf Diesel was on the right track. A few years after the first successful trial with the diesel engine in Augsburg, Ivar Knudsen started work as the new chief engineer at Burmeister and Wain, the largest shipbuilder and engine maker in Denmark. Ivar Knudsen was 3 years younger than Rudolf Diesel. He was also a trained engineer, but took a totally different route into the world of engineering than Rudolf Diesel.
Ivar Knudsen kom fra en fattig egn i Danmark, hvor han voksede op i en købmandsgård. Og derefter der gik han i lære som det vi i dag kalder maskinarbejder i Aarhus. Han havde en praktisk baggrund. Han var en meget flittig lærling, og der var ingen tvivl om allerede dengang, at han var en teknisk begævelse med stor interesse for mekanik.
Ivar Knudsen had only been with B&W for a short while when he started to modernize the company. He made work processes more efficient and brought in new technology to make B&W's engines more precise. This meant that at the end of the 1900s, B&W was building some of the world's most reliable steam engines. B&W was gradually able to take on larger and larger assignments, and the company grew steadily. Like Rudolf Diesel, Ivar Knudsen was interested in all kinds of technical challenges, progress and improvements. So it was natural for him to take a closer look at Rudolf Diesel's innovative work with a new type of engine.
Ivar Knudsen kunne se de fremtidsmuligheder, der var i dieselmotoren, og det skyldes hans praktiske kunde og hans teoretiske viden. Ville han være i stand til at udvikle dieselmotoren til både som kraftværker, svarende til den baggrund, han kom fra belysningsvæsenet, men også til skibe.
Right from the first trials with a new type of engine, the aim was to use the diesel engine aboard large vessels. As early as 1892, Rudolf Diesel had described the advantages for shipping in his paper.
It is almost impossible to estimate the advantages of using smaller engines in ships and thus doing away with boilers. In its simplicity, the diesel engine is definitely superior to all existing constructions, and this alone would justify replacement of the present engines.
Ivar Knudsen was quick to see the great potential in Rudolf Diesel's invention. In 1897, Ivar Knudsen was appointed the technical manager at B&W, and he fought hard for the factory to acquire a license to be the sole developer and maker of diesel engines in Denmark.
Jeg tror, han nok har haft sine problemer med at overtage ledelsen til at se det gode i den her og fornuften i det, mens han har været dygtig til at forklare sig, men der står stor respekt om ham også som maskiningeniør.
Ivar Knudsen travelled to Augsburg to visit Rudolf Diesel. Ivar Knudsen was looking forward to meeting the man behind the revolutionary engine and to take a closer look at the new invention he had heard so much about. The meeting between the two became a professional turning point for them both.
Ivar Knudsen, maskindirektøren, eller teknisk direktør, som det hedder i dag, var på et studieophold nede hos Rudolf Diesel i Tyskland. Der var han i 5 måneder, og da han kom hjem, så var han helt vild og blodig og ville have en aftale, så han fik patentet, plus at de måtte videreudvikle dieselmotoren. Og så kan man sige, at det var et vågestykke, men han turde gøre det.
B&W's board had reservations, but the energetic Ivar Knudsen got his way. And in January 1898, B&W and Rudolf Diesel finally signed the contract. The two engineers were in regular contact over the coming years. What started as a purely professional relationship developed in time into a close friendship. Rudolf Diesel was was very enthusiastic about Ivar Knudsen, and not least for his work.
He is the man that not only best understands my thoughts, but also has the greatest chance of developing them. I must admit that nobody has given me more than he. Despite the great difficulties and many problems, I have never lost courage, because Ivar Knudsen re-established my faith in the discovery and reassured me that I was on the right track.
At more or less the same time that B&W won the license for the diesel engine, the third backer of the Selandia, H.N. Andersen, passed yet another milestone as a businessman. He returned home to Copenhagen after great success with his company Andersen & Company in Bangkok. His vision was to make Copenhagen the centre of the North European trade with the Far East. So he founded EAC, the East Asiatic Company. He already had good contacts in the Far East, and EAC was a success right from the start.
Brun Andersen havde jo før han stiftede Andersen & Company været kaptajn på den thailandske konges skib, Tungkramon, og derfor var det naturligt, at det var søfarten imellem Thailand og Danmark, der kom til at præge starten af ØK-skibsfart.
While EAC was growing rapidly in the early 1900s, Ivar Knudsen knowledgeably directed the further development of the diesel engine at the B&W shipyard. Ivar Knudsen was visionary and persistent, and quickly incorporated the changes that improved Rudolf Diesel's invention.
Da Ivar Knudsen var færdig med forsøgsmaskinen, og den begyndte at køre det, så blev hele direktionen selvfølgelig inviteret ned og fik den fremvist. Og man var jo vant til, at ved dampmaskinen var der store lagre af kul ved siden af til at fyre, men her stod brændstoffet jo bare i en lille spand med en slange nede i. Så det var en stor overraskelse for dem.
The media and the outside world were starting to take an interest in the work. B&W was now in the process of becoming established as the leading maker of diesel engines worldwide. The next major challenge would be to develop the diesel engine for use in large cargo ships. That was what was occupying EAC's founder, H.N. Andersen. In 1909, H.N. Andersen accordingly invited B&W's Ivar Knudsen to an informal meeting to discuss what was required to be able to build diesel-driven cargo and passenger ships. The meeting was to be a critical turning point. Ivar Knudsen convinced H.N. Andersen of his abilities and potential for success, and H.N. Andersen could see the commercial potential of a diesel engine.
As a means of propulsion for ships, at this time the diesel engine is not perfect, but to wait until others have perfected it would mean being a step behind.
Ivar Knudsen and his people tackled the most important challenge. The engine had to be reversible so the ship could go astern. This would make diesel-driven ships more maneuverable than the established steamers and sailing ships.
Ivar Knudsen offered a competition for the steam engine through the reversible gears that he designed, which was the key element of what he did. And that switch from forward to reverse was revolutionised really at that time. It took just 20 seconds. It meant that the ships became much more nimble by comparison to their steam-engined brothers.
Ivar Knudsen and H.N. Andersen were not the only people to identify the great potential of the diesel engine. The Blohm & Voss shipyard in Hamburg was working towards the same goal for a luxury liner for the Hamburg America line, but when one of their diesel engines exploded during a test run, Blohm & Voss gave up on the diesel engine and went back to steam engines. In Denmark, B&W had resolved to do things better than Blohm & Voss. H.N. Andersen and Ivar Knudsen agreed that to begin with, B&W should first build a small test vessel of 400 tons. But, felt H.N. Anderson, if 400 tons was possible, then why not a ship of 1,000 tons? And if 1,000 tons was possible, why not 2,000 tons? 4,000? 6,000? Or, for that matter, a diesel-driven ship of 7,000 tons? EAC already wanted B&W to develop a series of big new ships for the Bangkok route, and in 1910, the two projects merged.
Da ØK og B&W i fællesskab besluttede, at Selandia skulle bygges som et motorskib, så havde man allerede haft motorer kørende som kraftværker i Danmark, og det var ØK, som leverede olien til disse motorer. Så det var meget naturligt, at man ligesom tog det skridt videre og byggede skibet. ØK var et rederi, som var vant til at løbe en ganske betydelig økonomisk risiko. Men det var også et rederi, som viste sig at være villig til at tage en meget stor teknisk risiko. Og det viste sig jo at være velbegrundet.
H.N. Anderson and Ivar Knudsen fully and firmly believed that the project would be successful. For safety's sake, they agreed that EAC and B&W should share the costs if the diesel engine were to be a disaster, as it had been at Blom and Voss. The new EAC ships were to be modern in every way and built as combined cargo and passenger ships. The cabin should be unusually large and the many saloons so excellent that people felt they were in a palace and not aboard a ship. Everything had been carefully thought through and nothing was spared. The accommodation, that is the internal fittings, was all in white with attention to the slightest detail and hand-carved teak and mahogany. The dining room was 2 decks to the ceiling so as to give a luxurious feel. And as a somewhat unusual feature, electric lighting was installed throughout.
Man skal betænke, at turen fra Nordeuropa og til Sydøstasien på det tidspunkt har varet en 5-6 uger. Og derfor har H.N. Andersen med gode arkitekters hjælp udviklet et koncept, der gjorde, at en kahyt ombord på Selandia var mere et hjem, end det var et kammer.
The Selandia was not like the traditional cargo and passenger ships. The hull was painted completely white, and the most remarkable feature was that there were none of the funnel that people knew from steamers. The small quantities of smoke were led through a pipe in the aftermost mast. The Selandia, the ship of the future, caused much less pollution than any steamer. The Selandia and her sister ships, Fionia and Jutlandia, were all 7,000 tonners. That was the largest ship that could cross the bar at the entrance to the port of Bangkok. Diesel engines weighed much less than steam engines, and diesel took much less space than coal, so the new ships were able to carry more cargo aboard. Diesel ships used less fuel than steamers, so they could sail further without bunkering. The Selandia could actually sail all the way from Copenhagen to Bangkok and back without refueling. H.N. Anderson spoke with enthusiasm about the potential for major gains.
The ship will mean a revolution in shipping, and afterwards they will talk about time before and after the Selandia.
Rudolf Diesel followed the work done by B&W on refining the diesel engine. But as the years passed, his health became steadily worse. Daily migraines and mild depression made it difficult for him to concentrate on his work.
Rudolf Diesel hat sehr viel gearbeitet, Nächte durchgearbeitet, und das hat ihn körperlich sehr beansprucht. Er hat immer wieder solche Gedanken geäußert, dass ihn eine Traurigkeit umgab. Vielleicht lag das auch ein bisschen in den Genen, denn auch sein Vater Theodor neigte zur Schwermut.
On the 30th of March 1911, the keel was laid for what would be the 15th ship built for EAC by B&W, but the first diesel-driven motor vessel.
Pressen fulgte naturligvis udviklingen af dieselmotoren på B&W meget tæt. B&W var på daværende tidspunkt Danmarks største fabrik, og hvad der skete på B&W havde betydning for hele Danmark.
And the international press closely followed the work at B&W in the final months of Selandia's building.
London and China Telegraph, 25th of September 1911. In the course of the next couple of days, a ship will be launched in Copenhagen, equipped with a new combustion engine on the diesel engine principle. It belongs to EAC.
Dieselmotoren, som skulle drive Selandia frem, skulle jo afprøves først på land i en prøvehal. Og det foregik en søndag i 1911. Og hvorfor en søndag? Fordi B&W aldrig startede noget nyt på en mandag, og ØK aldrig nogensinde ville starte noget på en fredag, så det blev søndag i kirketiden, at Ivar Knudsen, direktionen, plus de involverede medarbejdere, stiller op og ser, hvordan vil det gå med den her motor. De starter, og den starter med det samme. Og Knudsen bliver så begejstret. Han går rundt med bowlerhat, det gjorde man dengang. Han smider den op i luften flere gange, hopper rundt på et ben, så det har været en ren forløsning for ham, at nu lykkedes det efter så mange års prøvearbejde.
The Selandia was launched on the 4th of November 1911. At the beginning of 1912, Selandia did her trials in Øresund. She broke the winter ice well, and that created additional interest worldwide.
Galveston Daily News, 31st of January 1912. Selandia, the biggest oil-driven ship in the world, passed successful tests here today in which she maintained a speed of 12 knots. Fair play, the 15th of February 1912. Switching to oil rather than coal, getting rid of practically all engine room personnel, together with coal bunkers and the danger of fire, not to mention the additional space for cargo, cleanliness and the enormous speed it is possible to get out of the engine, must appeal to the ship owner. In Denmark, Politiken wrote, "It was very interesting to observe the ships that passed on the Sound. They slowed down to take a close look at this strange vessel that surged past them without steam and sail, and the ships, sailing the same way as Selandia, could not keep up however hard they tried."
Prøvesejladsen på Øresund for Selandia gik faktisk rigtig, rigtig godt. Det viser, at skibet gik 12,2 knob, og det var 1 knob mere, end man havde beregnet. Så både Ivar Knudsen, der var ombord, og ØK's folk var meget begejstrede efter den prøvesejlads.
On the 17th of February 1912, Ivar Knudsen proudly handed over the Selandia to H.N. Andersen. EAC's crew were now responsible for Selandia, which sailed under the Danish flag emblazoned with EAC's emblem, something H.N. Andersen had received special permission for. On a cold winter's day, Thursday the 22nd of February 1912, the Selandia passed Langelinie on her maiden voyage. H.N. Andersen and Ivar Knudsen were both aboard. Rudolf Diesel was unable to travel to Copenhagen to participate in Selandia's maiden voyage because of yet another migraine. Even though he was upset, he had to make do with reading the newspaper accounts of the festivities aboard the ship. The guests were set ashore at Elsinore, and Selandia set course for London. On the way, she made the brief stop to load cargo in Nørresundby. Selandia rounded Skagen on the Sunday morning and sailed westwards. Captain Gabe now ordered full speed ahead on the two big diesel engines, which together provided 2,500 horsepower. This gave Selandia an average speed of 11.5 knots. Diesel consumption was monitored closely and was extremely satisfactory on the trip across the North Sea and on the way to a perfectly timed advertising campaign. Early on the Tuesday morning, 27th of February, Selandia entered the Thames and set course for the West India docks. The British were surprised to see a ship working, since there had been a nationwide miners' strike the day before. The British merchant fleet lay completely still, as did the factories and power stations that ran on coal and steam. H.N. Andersen and Eva Knudsen had arranged a stopover in London to show off the revolutionary ship to the leading maritime nation.
Well, at that time, the British were they were world leaders in shipping, in the maritime industry and in trade. It was pre-First World War. The empire was still great, and they had many warships run by steam. What the diesel engine offered them was manoeuvrability, range, and power. It was clearly a tool for empire.
Winston Churchill, then First Lord of the Admiralty, was highly interested in the new diesel-driven ship. Churchill was known for his enthusiasm for technological progress. He therefore went to London's West India dock to see Selandia for himself. H.N. Andersen, Eva Knudsen and Selandia's Captain Gabe welcomed Churchill aboard. Churchill was shown round on deck and inspected the ship and had an informal chat on the bridge. But he wanted to see more of the ship than just chatting, and before long he found his way to what he was most interested in: Selandia's engine room.
He was most interested in the engine, and here I had the experience of having to open one of the tightly closed hatches into the crankcase, which was full of lubricating oil, and while Eva Knudsen explained, Churchill stood close by and looked on silently.
Winston Churchill was absorbed by what he heard and saw, and questioned Eva Knudsen minutely on how the diesel engine worked. Churchill went through everything down to the smallest detail and was clearly most impressed with Selandia's two big diesel engines. On his way out of the engine room, the British minister proclaimed,
Denmark, that has for a long while been showing the way in agriculture, has now taken the lead on the open seas. They are instructors for us all.
Churchill was the last man to leave the engine room. He discovered that in his enthusiasm, he'd got a lot of oil on his coat. But the enthusiastic minister made light of it, and when he left Selandia, he praised yet again what he had seen.
For me, it is a special duty to congratulate Denmark, an old seafaring nation that has shown the way and taken the lead with epoch-making progress in the development of shipping. This type of ship is the most perfect maritime masterwork of the century.
Det var noget af et scoop, at Selandia og BRV og ØK lykkedes at få den engelske konservative marineminister Winston Churchill ombord på skibet. Han var meget interesseret i teknik, og han var meget fremsynet i hele sin fremtræden, kan man sige. Og derfor havde han en række specialister med. De fulgte med skibet på den videre sejlads til Antwerpen, og på baggrund af det udtalte han meget, meget positivt om Danmark som søfartsnation.
Churchill was far from being the only Briton to be impressed with Selandia. A British journalist sailed aboard on the trip from England to Belgium and wrote glowing reports from the ship's engine room.
There are 16 cylinders, 8 on each side, absorbing and exploding a mixture of heavy oil and air. There is no rush and no stokers for fires and boilers because there are none on the Selandia.
At Selandia's next destination of Antwerp, the pilot said that in all his 46 years he had never found it so easy to handle a vessel. It would be easy to steer Selandia through the eye of a needle, he felt. Selandia then continued her voyage to Bangkok and also stopped in Genoa to load cargo. Underway, she became even more famous.
London and China Telegraph. The officers on Selandia say that everywhere she goes, she appears to attract great interest, and thousands of visitors of all nationalities from practically the whole world have been aboard to see the machinery of this gigantic oil-driven ship.
In cinemas around the world and in Singapore, shots of Selandia were shown on the news. On the 20th of April 1912, Selandia arrived in Bangkok for the first time. The first part of the voyage had been a greater success than H.N. Andersen had dared hope.
Da Selandia kommer ind til Bangkok, bliver den modtaget med meget stor festivitas, og her spiller også forholdet, som på det tidspunkt allerede har vokset sig stærkt imellem den danske kongefamilie og den thailandske kongefamilie, også ind. Så der er også royal bevågenhed ved ankomsten af Selandia i Bangkok. Så det er en stor triumftog.
As in the other ports, Selandia was shown off to journalists, officials and other interested visitors.
We met enthusiasm everywhere we went on this voyage. Out in the east, the brown coolies clapped their hands and did war dances in their enthusiasm for this strange ship, without smokestack and without smoke.
While Selandia was in the Far East, however, there was also criticism in the national papers about the new type of ship. The press wrote that the engines were unserviceable because of damaged cylinders, indicating that the whole project had gone wrong. There was regular contact between EAC's people in Bangkok and in Copenhagen to counter the misleading articles. Before leaving Bangkok, the engines were checked and fully serviced. As Selandia's chief engineer reported, everything was in the finest condition.
Apart from minor problems with exhaust valves and oil pumps, everything was working satisfactorily. On the voyage back, we just had some minor problems with a piston and a broken valve on the port engine.
In reality, the engine room crew actually had to do more to keep things going than admitted by the chief engineer, but his final conclusion was correct, however.
The whole voyage was completed within the time planned.
Selandia returned on the same route as the outward voyage, and on the 21st of June 1912, after a 4-month voyage, the ship again rounded Skagen on course for Aarhus. But instead of sailing from Aarhus home to Copenhagen, the ship was suddenly ordered directly to the German port of Kiel. Selandia's sister ship, Fionia, was already there in the midst of the annual regatta. Now the two EAC ships could be seen manoeuvring side by side, with the German Kaiser Wilhelm II as a keen spectator.
Politiken, 26th of June 1912. It was an historic moment when the world's first two motor-driven ships met for the first time. As they passed each other, Fionia went about to follow Selandia. It was a great surprise for the Kaiser to see this enormous vessel turn on its own axis as if she was a dinghy.
Kaiser Wilhelm was so impressed that he said how pleased he was that the Fionia had already been acquired for the Hamburg-America line. Fionia was renamed Christian X after the Danish king as a tribute to Denmark as a far-sighted seafaring nation. Kaiser Wilhelm also praised Selandia's sister ship in a personal letter to King Christian X.
I have been aboard, Fionia, and I hasten to send you congratulations on the amazing performance by Danish technicians. The ship represents an entirely new chapter in shipbuilding. The Danish engineers can justifiably give themselves the honor for having taken the first successful step in a new direction.
Betydningen af både besøget af Selandia i London og Fionias besøg i Kiel og senere overdragelse til Hamburg-Amerika-linjen er vigtig både for dansk maritims industris videreførelse hos disse to store nationer, og samtidig giver det Horn Andersen nogle forbindelser i både England og Tyskland, som er meget nyttige, også senere hen.
On the 26th of June 1912, Selandia arrived back in Copenhagen to a tumultuous welcome. Thousands of people had streamed to Copenhagen waterfront, and several hundred boats sailed out to meet her.
ØKs engagement og ledende rolle i indførelsen af dieselmotorskibene betyder, at ØK bliver anerkendt over hele jorden som en førsteklasses virksomhed, som man kan lave forretning med i alle verdenshjørner. Så Selandias betydning for ØK har været uvurderlig.
At Christmas 1912, Selandia left on her second voyage to the Far East. The ship was now being recognized everywhere she went because of her untraditional appearance, and she had an unusual nickname amongst the locals in Thailand who called her Three Sticks Bamboo. This was a tribute to her being able to sail without sail or funnel. Outsiders, too, tried to exploit Selandia's wave of success. In Singapore, a Danish seaman appeared in court and was punished for having used deception to get food, drink and a stay at Raffles Hotel by claiming he was the captain of the Selandia. But when the ship sailed and the fake captain was still enjoying himself at the hotel on credit, all was revealed. The seaman was condemned to 6 weeks in prison and a fine of $180. While Selandia was enjoying her success in the East, dark clouds were gathering around the inventor Rudolf Diesel. On the 29th of September 1913, the 55-year-old German engineer boarded the steamer Dresden in Antwerp. He was heading for a business meeting in England with British engine makers at the Diesel Company. After dinner aboard and a walk on the upper deck with a colleague, Rudolf Diesel went back to his cabin. He emphasized that he was to be woken early the following morning before the ship docked in Harwich. It was the last time anyone saw him alive. There is no decisive evidence for what happened aboard. Did Rudolf Diesel have one of his violent migraines, lose his balance and fall overboard unnoticed? He had lost a lot of money on unsuccessful property investments. Was he so weighed down by his financial problems that he chose to commit suicide by jumping overboard? Or was there a more mysterious explanation?
Die Theorie, dass in einem Migräneanfall über Bord gegangen sein könnte oder dass ihm schlecht war, weil seekrank war, das hat die Polizei sofort untersucht, als erstes. Und zwar war in dieser Nacht, es war eine ganz ruhige, fast windstille Nacht und der Seegang war ganz ruhig und man hat das schon ausgeschlossen. Und dass er in einem Migräneanfall über diese Reling gefallen sein könnte, ist auch fast nicht möglich, denn die ist zu hoch gewesen. Da hätte er nicht das Gleichgewicht verlieren können.
Ich könnte mir gut vorstellen, dass es vielleicht Selbstmord gewesen war, denn er befand sich in einer prekären finanziellen Lage, denn er hatte das ganze Geld, das er vorher mit der Lizenzvergabe verdient hatte, größtenteils wieder verloren gehabt. Er hatte auch technische Auseinandersetzungen mit den verschiedenen Lizenznehmern gehabt, wurde auch schlecht beraten bei verschiedenen Immobiliengeschäften und er hatte einen großen Misserfolg bei seiner eigenen Dieselmotorenfabrik. So wäre es möglich, dass er sich vielleicht für einen Freitod entschieden hat.
A couple of days after Rudolf Diesel's death, his widow opened a suitcase that she had received as a present from her husband before he went off to England. The case contained a fortune, 20,000 marks in cash, and when Rudolf Diesel's bank accounts were checked, they were empty. So it is natural to conclude that Rudolf Diesel had planned his suicide. And yet, as part of his trip, Rudolf Diesel had accepted an invitation to dinner with the greatest designer of naval engines in the UK, Sir Charles Parsons. He had also told his friends that he looked forward to the meeting. Could there perhaps have been professional and perhaps political motives behind Rudolf Diesel's death?
Es gab diese Spekulation, dass es vielleicht auch ein militärischer Grund gewesen sein könnte für einen möglichen Mord, denn man wollte ja nicht, dass Know-how abfließt aus Deutschland. Auch diese Spekulationen gab es durchaus, ja.
Ich glaube, dass hinter diesem Tod der damalige deutsche Geheimdienst steckte. Und ich habe versucht, an die Archive heranzukommen im preußischen Staatsarchiv. Ich habe keinen Zugang bekommen. Und das ist noch unter Verschluss. Und ich hoffe, dass das irgendwann in späteren Jahren mal jemand schafft, da reinzukommen oder dass die Familie den Daumen wegnimmt, der da drauf ist. Aber diese Mordtheorie ist diejenige, die ich persönlich favorisiere, weil anders kann ich es mir nicht vorstellen.
Some years later, the speculation surrounding Rudolf Diesel's mysterious death gained new traction following another inexplicable tragedy. Rudolf Diesel's death affected Ivar Knudsen deeply. He had lost a respected colleague and close friend.
He was a shining star.
Ivar Knudsen var selvfølgelig meget bevæget over at have mistet en ven, som kort forinden havde besøgt BRV og havde set, hvad Ivar Knudsen havde drevet det til på BRV.
The First World War broke out at the beginning of August 1914. Most of Europe was shaken. World War I showed that the revolutionary technology could also be used for other purposes than peaceful trade between continents. The diesel engine was to prove its worth especially for submarines. Fleets on both sides of the war experimented in vain with attempts to use first steam and later petrol for propulsion, but the diesel engine was chosen by virtue of its safety and scope. The inventor of the diesel engine had been highly visionary, but he had never wished his invention to be used for military purposes.
Rudolf Diesel war kein Militarist. Er hat auch nie beim Militär gedient. Rudolf Diesel war ein Moralist. Darauf deuten auch seine zahlreichen Schriften zur sozialen Lage der Arbeiterschaft hin. Er selber hat sich dazu nie geäußert. Er hat nur immer betont, dass sein Dieselmotor das Leben des kleinen Handwerkers erleichtern sollte. Und er wollte die Menschen von harter körperlicher Arbeit befreien.
Denmark was neutral during the war. This meant ships were free to sail everywhere. But that is not how it always was, as Captain F.F. Tillish of the Selandia noted in his logbook in 1917.
One dark night in the Mediterranean, we were hailed by a submarine with Morse signals from the torch. We were asked what ship, and we immediately replied Selandia, and nothing more happened. Whether the submarine was German or British, I do not know, but the name was enough for them to be happy, and we were all glad and impressed.
Selandia's owner could not navigate outside the World War. In actual fact, he was directly involved in trying to stop it. King Christian X of Denmark asked H.N. Andersen to establish lines of communication between the parties to the conflict. H.N. Andersen took this role very seriously, and he subsequently received the Order of the Elephant for his efforts.
H.N. Andersen rejser ofte til London, til Berlin, til St. Petersborg. I et forsøg på at mægle og, efter hans mening, forsøge at stoppe krigshandlingerne.
On his voyages with Selandia in 1912, H.N. Andersen had met various enthusiastic celebrities, and he now took full advantage of this network in his mediation efforts. Despite H.N. Andersen's best efforts, the war took its own bloody course. In 1918, when the war was over, EAC shipping operations returned to normal, and the old Selandia route from Europe to Asia was resumed. B&W, too, had got through the years of the war satisfactorily and had won major international orders. This meant Ivar Knudsen was in demand as a technical advisor around the world. He had reported on the Selandia at the Royal Institute of Naval Architects in London and had made contact with British businessmen. In March 1920, he was on his way to India to establish factories for the British. It was to be a voyage of destiny for Ivar Knudsen. On board one ship, he suddenly fell ill and suffered terribly in the heat. The reason for his illness turned out to be serious poisoning. It could have been food poisoning, but none of the others aboard suffered stomach pain and fever. Ivar Knudsen fought for his life, but in vain. Just a few hours later, the ship's doctor pronounced him dead. Rudolf Diesel and Ivar Knudsen were friends and both died when traveling on British service.
Dass Ivar Knudsen wenige Jahre später auf ähnliche geheimnisvolle Weise ums Leben kommt, das ist schon eine seltsame Parallelität, die kaum noch Zufall sein kann. Und ich glaube, dieser Todesfall von Knudsen würde meine Theorie noch bestätigen und umgekehrt.
Whether this was down to chance or whether there was any connection between the two deaths will probably never be established. Of the three men who made it possible to build Selandia, only one was now left, EAC's founder H.N. Andersen, and he was now turning to new shipping projects. So in 1936, EAC sold Selandia onto a Norwegian company. H.N. Andersen died the following year, and with him closed an era of Danish shipping history. The three great brains behind the creation of the Selandia, and especially the sensational engine, were no more. Selandia by then had sailed more than 1 million nautical miles, or 45 times around the globe, thus heralding the age of globalization.
It was the first ship with a diesel engine, so it was the precursor to globalization. It was the later diesel engines were to become more efficient, they were larger, they would power bigger ships, and it allowed ship designers to build much bigger ships of, say, 16,000 TEUs, which allowed globalization to take place. Without the diesel engine first, the larger and faster ships wouldn't have existed, and globalization, as we know it today, in the modern era, wouldn't have existed.
On the 26th of January 1942, a simple navigation error off the coast of Japan put the Selandia aground. On the 30th anniversary of her launching, she disappeared under the waves, although the whole crew was saved. Selandia has gone, but she will not be forgotten. The diesel engine that made her world famous is now taken for granted in the maritime industry. With H.N. Andersen and Eva Knudsen's skills and Rudolf Diesel's innovative discovery, the three men gave the world what turned out to be the key to globalized world trade at sea.